Good morning, party people. This is Brent coming to you from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, and it's 3 a.m. here because even when I'm on vacation, I'm up at like 2, 3 a.m. every morning, and that's not something that I've been able to change. It just feels like I'm hardwired that way. I only need a certain amount of sleep, and when I get that sleep, I am I don't even need coffee. I'm just off to the races immediately. So I set up a bunch of, or let y'all put in a whole bunch of questions about professional development. So now I'm going to go through those, and let's see what we have here. So it looks like, first one up is, too old for your games, Infra, I'm busy, who says, hello Brent, how do you get managers to realize that the cloud won't solve the problems with a bad infrastructure team, and the team could make cloud SQL even worse because they just don't bother to understand the importance of all things DBA? So you're wrong on this one, actually. So I'm going to disagree with you. I think that the cloud can solve the problems of a bad infrastructure team around database administration. It sounds like you might be jaded and angry with your infrastructure team if they move to platform as a service. By platform as a service, I mean Azure SQL DB, Azure SQL DB Hyperscale or managed instances, Amazon RDS, Google Cloud SQL Server. If you're not running VMs in a cloud up there, they can help get rid of the production DBA tasks like patching the cluster, troubleshooting why the cluster went down. Oh, you may hear things outside here. I'm right by the ocean. I'm hearing the crashing surf every now and then. Restoring backups, because it's all just now PowerShell basically. They can just run commands or go through the GUI. I think the cloud is actually great for people who suck at regular infrastructure, and it's just different challenges. But the thing I got to warn you is I read a lot of bitterness and anger in your message, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to get rid of you and going to cloud platform as a service in order to do it. So I think your attitude might actually need to be the one that changed. The next one is kind of interesting. Captain McLeavy Pants, I sense a theme this morning, says, how do you know when it's time to move on? Every time that I look back through my life, by the time that I even ask the question, should I move on, it was already past that time. I can't say this for everybody, but for me, I will cling to something trying to make it work. Whether that is a job, a friendship, a relationship, I will cling to it trying to make it work longer than I probably should have. The let it go, the earlier that you can say, oh, I've made this mistake repeatedly in the past, it probably is time for me to move on. The best time to look for a job is when you're productively employed, when you have a job that is paying your bills and you don't have a lot of stress from that. So that would be it. The other thing that I always look at is, and I mentioned this in the last stream too, how much risk are you willing to tolerate in your professional life as opposed to your family and career? It can't all be chaos at the same time. That's a recipe for ulcers and anger and sadness. So if you're feeling stable in your home life situation and you don't feel like you need to dedicate a whole lot of time to that, then it's a great time to go look. Because I know in 2020 it was really tough for a lot of us to deal with our home life situation, let alone throwing the professional development situation into the slap shop. Next up, Escape 9 to 5 says, Brent, I would like to ask you how to get your first client and present yourself as a business, not as someone looking for a full-time position. What can anyone do to build trust and authority? I'm a full-time employee looking to move forward on my own. B-L-O-G, blog. B-L-O-G, blog. The second thing that I would do, which is longer, too many letters, and I don't want to clap the whole thing out, is present, is be on YouTube, Twitch, leave the recordings up full time, talking directly to the audience. It's a way to build a level of personal trust because all of you feel by now like you know me. You've been on vacations with me. You've been in my house, at my home, in studio, watch me work. That builds a level of trust and credibility so that by the time someone picks up the email to call you, they already know you, they're already sold on you, and that's done. I can't say enough, blog and present. Because also those are things that you can do during your professional full-time employment. You just have to check with your company's HR department and make sure that you're allowed to blog and present. Sometimes there are some industries, like certain financial industries, hedge funds, whatever, where you're not allowed to do any public speaking or writing without clearing it through the company's PR or human resources departments first to make sure that you're not letting company secrets go out the door. Next up, Eeyore asks, is there an equivalent to Brenozar but focused on the dev side instead of DBA? Any recommendations of people to follow? Yeah, so Julie Lerman, Jeff, it's like C# Fritz. I think it's Jeff Fritz. I don't actually know what his full name is. I know he's C# Fritz. But if you, the place that I would start is Twitch. Search on Twitch for the programming language that you're into, and there will be people who stream on there. Odds are the people who stream on there are the kinds of people that you want to be around because they produce a lot of content. So I immediately think Julie Lerman, C# Fritz, Noop Cat, who's, oh my gosh, why can't I think of her name on Twitch? I'll put a series of links to them below in the YouTube notes. Immediately Siri pops up as if she's going to help. That's not going to help. And you know what? The other commenters will too. If you look down in the comments, I'll task y'all who's on the dev side who produces a lot of content, whether it's written or live streams. Next up, Random Guy says, I have 20 years of SQL Server experience, or just says SQL experience here. Where would you branch out next? Amazon RDS, Postgres, NoSQL. What do you think the next big trend is, and what would you do to start preparing it? Talk to your developers and see what data storage or data persistence layers, because it sounds like you're interested in persistence layers, what persistence layers they're looking at for new Skunkworks projects. And you want to phrase it as, when you're talking to the developers, I'm not trying to own it. I'm not trying to tell you how to do it. I want to learn alongside you. I'm as curious about this, and I promise not to get in the way. I just want to learn more about it. What's the persistence layer you're using, and why did you choose that? And then ask them how happy they are with it. So, for example, at one of my clients, the development team decided to do a new project in MongoDB. They were like, oh, we're going to get around some weaknesses with SQL Server by going to schemaless, not having to plan anything out ahead of time, key value type stuff. And the initial experience was very good, and then it fell apart as they started to scale. I'm not saying that that's MongoDB all over. It's not. There are plenty of places where MongoDB is a great fit. People are very happy with it. But if you have it happening at your company and you're getting unsolicited or unfiltered feedback from your developers on how it's going, and that you can ask them the kind of challenges that they're having, and can you dig into the documentation to go help, then you have it as real world on your resume. Whereas if it's just something that you played around with in Skunkworks at home, it's much less valuable on your resume. So that's where I would start. Even if you don't think it's the biggest thing out in the market, if your dev team is using it, other dev teams are probably using it as well. All right, let's see here. What else? Got a few people who have, some things were flagged. Let me go get this in and put the next one up. So let's see here. Next up is Stuart says, hi Brent, I'm working hard to bring stability to all of our database environments, adding things like regular snapshots for emergencies, regular restores to test backups, analyzing long-running query metrics, etc. What are the must-haves, most important must-haves that every SQL DBA should implement? A checklist for what you would do in the things that happen the most frequently to you. If you are constantly, like once a week, you find yourself having to do a restore, if once a week you find yourself having to grant access to a user, if once a week you find yourself having to troubleshoot why a query is slow, start writing a checklist of your process of what you do when it happens. Then you take someone else that you believe wants to have a better career, someone who's a developer, who's a sysadmin, who you go, I can groom them into the next database administrator at this company. And you say, all right, here's a checklist for when this event happens. Does this seem like something you would be interested in adding to your Swiss Army knife of skill sets? Because everybody else is always trying to grow their career at the same time that you are. So then if they are, then the next time that emergency happens, you grab the checklist, you go to them and you say, all right, let's do this together. I want you to watch me doing it. And you do that a couple of times. Then the next time that it happens, you hand the checklist to them and you go, you want to drive? And you'll sit next to them while they do it. Within 2-3 months, you're going to find yourself starting to automate away, and by automate I mean a meatbag robot, someone who sits next to you or is your next junior. But people think of automation, the only way to do it is with scripts. Really, the first way to do it is to have a meatbag robot, which is the totally lack of empathetic way of terming one of your coworkers, but I find it really funny. If you can automate it with a meatbag robot, then you can later automate it with a script, but just start with having someone else on your team who can do the most common, most critical things that you are faced with, because that starts to free up more of your schedule, and that's a rolling snowball that rolls downhill. Don't be a single point of failure is another way to say that. AO asks, every once in a while I ask the same question just to see if the answer is changing per today's standards. Is a DBA certification still worth getting? Or is a DBA certification worth getting? So this week I actually have blog posts scheduled to go live with the most common questions that I get, and that's in the list. There's a whole blog post just dedicated just to that one. I think that Microsoft certifications are still hot flaming garbage because they have the attention span of a 6-year-old loaded up with sodas and pop rocks. They change every 6 weeks. Hey, we got our new certification line up here. This is going to be the good one. This is going to stick around for at least 2 years, folks. Come on in, waste your money, spend a lot of time. Oh, our bad. Hit the expiration date. Here's our new idea. So I have a really hard time telling people with gainful employment to get that garbage because it's going to be worthless in 2 years. Now, having said that, if you're at a loss for how you would learn something new, certifications present you with an artificial milestone in your career where you can say, here's a list of things that I could learn, and then cross an arbitrary finish line. The finish line was not created by you, it was created by someone else who has no idea what data professionals do for a living. Like, I look at the list of things that these examine, and they're check out Service Broker 4000. They can hook up with JSON to go link into your Postgres. I'm like, no one does that. It just doesn't, it's not out in the real world. So as long as you're doing that, why not pick up a set of tasks that you believe are important, make up a certification as if you were going to test some set of skills, and then build like a fake test, say, all right, I want to measure that the candidate is able to do these things, and then go cross that finish line yourself. But otherwise, why let a stranger's marketing team go dictate where your career is going to go? So it's garbage. I have very passionate feelings about that. I feel like Microsoft is fleecing the community, taking money from the community for things that are not worth money. It's a sham. They should be ashamed of themselves. But next up, Deb says, hello Brent, in my SQL DBA and developer role, there is too much for me to take care of alone. In planning to bring a junior DBA on board, how can I prepare for an experience that benefits the whole team without increasing my oversight duties? Says, Genial el sol para mí, Deb. Obviously, there's no soul out here yet. It's still pretty early. When you're bringing on a DBA, so the thing that I just talked about, having a checklist of stuff, that is one of how can you start building out a checklist of things that you expect them to be able to tackle when you're not around, and gradually segueing that into doing it side by side with them initially. The other thing that I think is really important, that if anything, Kendra Little really taught me this. She's a Microsoft Certified Master who now works at Redgate Software. But build a learning plan with that person. Find out what they're passionate about doing 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now. And you may not want to do this the first day. Give them some breathing room to get on their feet and feel like they can trust you with an unfiltered answer. Because otherwise, if you do it the first day that they come on, they're going to say things like, whatever's important to you, I just want to help you succeed here. Please don't fire me yet. But once they know that they're kind of in a safe, comfortable environment, then talk to them about building a learning plan of what have you always wanted to learn. And it doesn't matter whether it's strictly related to your job or not. For example, I worked in a wine and spirits company, and if you wanted to, you could go work with other departments and learn about other aspects of the business. A certain number of hours per month, you could go expand your horizons. And I've always wanted to treat, you can kind of tell that with some of the answers that I get. I'm extremely open book with everyone that I work with. Here's what I'm doing. What do you want to learn? What can I teach you that I know that you're passionate about and interested in? Don't let me take a stone chisel and here's your learning plan, but work cooperatively with that person and find out what they're passionate about. And then they'll be much more interested in learning it and sharing it with others, and they'll be a more valuable member of your team. So make sure to start setting out that career growth for them. Because if they don't grow with you, they're going to grow somewhere else. Next up, Kundan says, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I lost my job. I'm sorry to hear that. I started freelancing, but I'm not getting enough projects. I don't understand if it's my bidding cost problem or my bidding message problem. Can you suggest some tips to succeed? The problem with freelancing, and it listed a couple of freelancing sites, the problem with freelancing is that you're up against the lowest bidder, or you're up against whoever's the cheapest, and you're up against whoever has the best message. So there are people on sites like that who have an excellent track record, who have tons of client feedback from past customers. So I'll tell you the way that I work. I use stuff like Upwork, Freelancer, not as a service seller, but as a buyer. When I'm trying to hire someone to do WordPress work, video editing type stuff, when I'm trying to hire someone to do it, I don't look at the cheapest, I look at the most expensive. I look at the most expensive and I go, what is it about them that's different? And usually by the time that they're on the high side of the pricing tier, they're better at what they do. They have an established process. They are charging higher rates because they know that they're worth it. Whereas the people on the bottom tier are charging low rates because they're just desperate. And that's not a great place to be in when I'm a business and I'm trying to find someone who's amazing at what they do. So what I would do is I would go look at the people with the highest prices and ask yourself why you can't charge that. If you Google for double your freelancing rate, there is a podcast series and ebook series by Brennan Dunn that talks about why you're charging too little for the work that you do and starting to convince you on charging more. Yeah, I can't even begin to do justice to Brennan's psychology on it. I'm a huge believer in it. And as soon as I read his work, I more than doubled my rates and I've never looked back. So that, I know that it sounds like a huge leap. You're like, oh my God, I can't get any work for hardly any money. How am I possibly going to get work with more money? Try it. But you can't just jack your prices up. You also have to read that work to understand how you have to label yourself and message yourself, but looking at the other people in your market that are charging very high. By your market, I mean your technical area. that are charging very high and ask what's different between you and them. But here's the thing though, with the freelancing sites, it's really hard to get rich. You're much more likely to succeed emailing your past network, everyone that you've ever worked with, and saying, hey, I'm available for work. How can I help you succeed? Because they already know you. They know that you know what that you're doing. If you can convince your past network to hire you, you're going to be much better off financially too as well. Next up, Not As Good DBA says, I've always been an infrastructure DBA, and recently I started doing more development tasks such as query tuning. Since I see those tasks are more automated than ever, no, they are not even close. I don't know where you're seeing that. Query tuning tasks are nowhere near automated. It's probably the least automated thing that's still out there. It says, since I see those tasks are more automated than ever, I'm thinking I should be more oh, you kind of reworded your question really weird. Do you think dev tasks will be more? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Okay, so let's think about the three traditional historic careers involved in databases. So there's development, building new things from the ground up. That's not automated at all. It's always going to be hugely vibrant. The pay isn't the highest because there are so many developers, because it's easy to come out of college with a development degree, and it's incorrect, but companies often think that they can replace one senior architect with like three brand new, fresh off the college stream, lifestyle developers. So there's always a money thing there. The other extreme is production DBA, someone who keeps the lights on, who does backups, configuration, troubleshooting why the cluster went down. That job is slowly getting automated, but you still have another decade in that at least. There will still be production database administrators in the year 2030. The tasks will look different. I mean, there's going to be more around securing the data, securing the backups, shuttling data from one place to the other, from cloud to cloud, from your production data environment over to a development environment, all kinds of stuff like that, because we're still not making synthetic data, whatever, for test and dev. So those are the two extremes, dev and production DBA. In the middle, there's development DBA, and that is empowering other developers to make their code go faster. That's what I decided to specialize in because it's the least automated and the least wizardy, and there's also a huge demand for it because you can sling any code that you want up into the cloud, but that does not mean it's going to go fast. And it'll scale like crazy, but it'll scale with your wallet. Like you have to keep sliding your credit card in order to make that thing go faster. So in the development DBA role, that's where you take existing code and you tune it, you tune the indexes in order to make that go faster and cut your hosting costs, whether it's conventional SQL Server or whether it is cloud-based stuff. That I think is just on fire. It's huge. It's going to continue to be huge for the next decade. That's where I put all my chips in, and I am riding that thing out. All right, so we have a bunch more questions, but I'm actually going to stop there and do that as one episode, and then I'll record another episode here in a minute, just so that I can break this up, because I have really low bandwidth down here in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. It is a very bottom of a peninsula, of the Baja Peninsula here. Not a lot of fiber optic internet. Erika and I probably would have moved here a year or two ago, other than the fact that I just can't get enough internet down here to live stream in the quality that I would want to live stream in. But beautiful part of Mexico. We're coasting out the holidays here. I'm going to spend Christmas and New Year's here and just relax. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll break here and do another round of your questions.